Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to bring you guys the best support characters in the game. Now, there aren't that many support characters, so the list is actually less than 10, but I wanted to make this list, one, because it was recently suggested by a fan, thank you very much, and two, because it's a bit misleading at times when you see veterans, endgame players, people who have been playing the game for a long time, they're in high-level alliances, and you see them investing heavily in support characters, and so I feel like it can be a little bit misleading for newer players and for people who are just building up their rosters, and so I wanted to make this as well as a kind of a PSA, but not really, just to clarify and quantify just how much these different support characters bring to teams, why high-level players invest in them, and where you should prioritize these characters on your list of highest to lowest character development priorities. For those of you that don't know, a support character for the means of this list is going to be defined as any character that gives the whole team a benefit. Now, there are more than 7 characters that do this, but I just selected the top 7 because the other ones honestly don't do enough to be anywhere near this list, and I also didn't want to count any just pure leaderships because that can be a bit too wide range, and we would have this list go on for way too long. So to start us off, at number 7 on the list is Volstagg, the chub. You know, he's gotten a lot of love for being heavy and being proud, and I love this guy, and his tier 2 makes him a support character. So his tier 2 gives all of the heroes, the non-villains in the team, a damage reduction that's 20%, which is actually quite strong. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to villains, and some of the strongest characters in the game, Black Order most notably, are villains, but this would go really well to further increase the tankiness of someone like Odin. If you had Odin and Volstagg in a team, Odin would have incoming damage reduced by half, a full 50%, which is insane. So for those reasons, Volstagg comes in at number 7. Number 6 on the list, my main man, Ronan. Now, Ronan gets on this list for 2 reasons. The first reason is because his Kree Justice skill gives all team members a 20% dodge ignore. That might not seem so great, but when you couple it with his incredible leadership, it starts to develop the argument for him. And I picked Ronan on this list, and I put him ahead of Volstagg simply for the reason that Ronan is basically the discount Thanos. If you want to get Thanos' leadership, which is insane, but you don't want to pay the materials for Thanos, if you're trying to get your Loki to be boss as fuck and do crazy damage, or even Thor, or even, you know, characters like Destroyer or Captain Marvel, look no further than Ronan. His leadership is the second strongest in the game, and his passive at tier 2 just increases his qualities as a support character and as a leadership only type of character. So for those reasons, he's on the list. But again, like Volstagg, Ronan is not to be highly prioritized at all. He should not be in your thoughts when you're thinking about who to tier 2 or develop next. Number 5 on the list, and I might get a little bit of flack for this, but it's actually going to be my man Groot. Now, I do have a solid argument for why I think Groot actually drops several places on this list and arrives squarely at number 5, and I think that's just in the shift in meta and in the shift in powerful characters and what characters can do for us. So Groot has been a great support character for the longest time, for one, because his spore can be passed on, so you can drop the spore and switch and give someone else the heals. More notably and more recently for his Bloom tier 2 passive, where he will, you know, support by recovering HP even though he's not in the fight. So he's the support character who heals even when he's not being hit or even, you know, active, you know, just sitting on the sidelines basically. But the reason why Groot no longer needs to be so high on the list, and the reason why I really don't recommend people to farm Groot that much anymore, is because the game has shifted heavily away from a heal meta and a survival meta. And the reason for that is because Netmarble has introduced so many new tier 2 passives and new fixes or revamps or reworks for characters that give them invincibility or immunity. You know, the list is very long. Black Bolt, Elsa, Black Panther, Captain Marvel. There are so many characters who can make themselves invincible or make themselves immune just by pressing a button on command, and that has really alleviated the need for a steady heal type of character, that steady heal support. And people are going towards more damaging leaderships, more damaging support characters, more damaging buff passable characters, and that's why people like Groot have taken a hit, and that's why he's only number 5 on this list. Number 4 on this list, my main girl, Daisy Johnson. Unfortunately, she doesn't have her tier 2 yet, so she may turn out to be an even more powerful support character than she is currently. But Daisy lands squarely at number 4 on this list because of her more bang for your punch skill. This skill gives you the obelisk trigger where it increases your damage by a huge number for 2 times, and this is passable to other characters. So Daisy is one half of that, 10 seconds or less, watch me clear this boss in one shot videos that you see, propagating YouTube and kind of confusing people and generally being worth not much. Combine Daisy with Warwolf and then another high DPS character, and you've got yourself a highlight clip that you can jerk off to for about 5 minutes. Whoop-de-doo. Daisy's on this list because she empowers any character essentially, and she can do so for 2 times, so you can cycle through 2 skills, or if your cooldown is short enough, you can cycle 1 skill twice in the case of, let's say, Proxima's 5th skill if you're very, very lucky. And so Daisy enables a lot of characters to do things like clear Infinity Thanos, to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do because they don't do enough damage fast enough. So she really cranks the meter all the way up to 11, and she really makes it easier for players to get the most out of their DPS machines like Angela, Hulkbuster, Proxima, etc. Number 3 on the list is the Ancient One from Doctor Strange, and the Ancient One is on this list because not only, like Groot, does the Ancient One have the healing skill. This one is called Ancient Enchantment, where you can switch to the Ancient One, drop the heal, and switch out on the 5th skill. It also heals in a larger radius, and it has a much shorter cooldown than Groot's, which makes it a better support heal. Unfortunately, the Ancient One does not have a heal leadership or a heal tier 2 passive, but what the Ancient One does have is an excellent energy damage blast hero leadership and an excellent tier 2 passive that gives all team members the 25% ignore dodge, which is better than Ronan's, and a 25% increase to damage types, which actually turned out to be only fire, cold, lightning, poison, and mind. So she won't increase regular physical and energy damage by 25%, or he, I guess, if you don't have the uniform. But the Ancient One will boost characters like Angela with the uniform, Red Hulk, Thor, Jane Foster, those types of characters, Loki, Misty Knight. Their elemental skills will be boosted by 25%, which is not a small number. Even characters like Black Widow, Winter Soldier with the Captain America uniform. So the Ancient One's leadership, although it doesn't apply to every single character, her tier 2 passive, it does apply to actually a lot of characters in the game. I would probably have to ballpark it somewhere around at least 20. So for that fact, and for the fact that the dodge ignore is actually more valuable than Ronan's, and the heal, Ancient One is number 3 on this list. The top 2 characters on this list are here because they're excellent support characters, but also because they will fool you, or they may mislead you into thinking that they're more valuable than they are based on how much they've been invested in by high-level players. Number 2 on the list is Warwolf, and he's on this list for 2 reasons. One, he's got the Howl to Mars 5th skill, which gives an insane all-attack, all-speed crit rate bonus for 15 seconds. This, along with the Daisy Johnson buff that we spoke about previously, will enable pretty much any character to do bonkers DPS in a hurry. You can use Warwolf to augment any character's damage and make them from even just a passively or passably good character to an insane monster for 15 seconds. You can even make Ant-Man look like Thanos for a short while. But on top of that, Warwolf got an additional tier 2 passive that just cranks up his supportness to the next level, and that's the Rally Howl tier 2 passive. He gives all team members on the team 30% increased critical damage and a 20% increase to all crit rate. So what he basically does is he gives any character that you pair him with on a team the equivalent of some characters' tier 2 passives like Iron Fist. So it's insane how much more damage you get out of characters just by using Warwolf as a support for tier 2, and for those reasons he comes in at number 2 on the list. Number 1 on the list, if you haven't already guessed it, it's my girl Wasp. She's foxy, she's sly, and she's an excellent support character, one of the best in the game. And she is an excellent support character for a few different reasons. For one, her Swarm Shield can be applied to any character. You just have to switch out of Wasp after you cast it. It doesn't last that long, but it does enable characters who are otherwise squishy or who need to fight up close, the ability to do so without getting hurt and without getting punished. Additionally, her leadership is excellent and applies to all members of your team, so there's no restrictions like Thanos or Ronan. But on top of that, her Winsome Wasp passive for tier 2 is one of the best support passives in the game. It applies to all team members, it removes all debuffs, and it's basically the strongest counter we have so far for the Doctor Strange freeze meta. Because of those reasons, Wasp is number 1 on the list, but she's number 1 for a few other reasons. And now I want to get into the second part of the video. I want to switch gears and talk about why it's a bit misleading to have support characters at tier 2 and not talk about why you may not want to invest in them, or why it's actually a bad idea for you to invest in them if you're a new or even an average score or an average tier player. So I wanted to explain a little bit more about why I ranked the characters the way that I did. The reason why, for example, I ranked Wasp ahead of Warwolf is because Warwolf is useless outside of his support. He's not a good character in his own right, and even playing with him and giving him his own buff, even howling to Mars and then continuing to howl as Warwolf, is not that great. He is strictly a support character. So even if you invest your honor tokens in him, even if you build him up, he's never going to be more than the guy who gets you a higher score for Doctor Strange's Extreme Alliance Battle Day. He's not going to be anything more than the guy who lets you beat Doctor Strange in Timeline Battle, or lets you beat Daredevil in Shadowlands Stage 25 in 10 seconds instead of 30 seconds. He's not, unless they revamp the character, this is as good as it's going to get. Whereas a character like Wasp is actually a very strong character in her own right. Even if you just have her for her own merits and not as a support character, Wasp is great. Even at tier 1, Wasp can clear a level 10 Shadowlands combat Hulk fuck rumble. That thing actually drives me nuts, and Wasp can pretty consistently solo it by herself. So she's a very valuable, useful character, even aside from her support tendencies. Same goes for someone like Ancient One. The reason why Ancient One ranks 2 levels higher than Groot is because the Ancient One, although her DPS is not great, it's a lot better than Groot's. Her leadership cranks her own DPS up even more. She's got invisibility and illusions and summons. She's got so many different tools that Groot just doesn't have. And so while Groot, struggles to clear Shadowlands floors after like 10 or 12 because his DPS is just not there, his damage is too low, the Ancient One, especially at tier 2, can get those damage numbers, can help you clear in higher stages. Shadowlands is just one example, but the Ancient One can clear World Boss, whereas it's very difficult for Groot to clear World Boss without extreme strikers to help cover up the fact that his damage is so pitiful. And another example is someone like Daisy. Daisy is not a good character to invest in. Once upon a time, it was pretty much necessary to get Daisy to try and guarantee a world boss clear, because you could do something like Daisy, Warwolf, Iron Fist, and do those DPS shenanigans to try and, clear Black Dwarf, to try to clear Thanos. That's no longer the case. We don't need those kinds of insane buffs because 1, we can get them from obelisks, and 2, because in general, the power level of characters, especially with incoming tier 2s like Elsa, Black Bolt, etc., have put them at par or even on a greater level than those other previous tier 1 characters with the Daisy Johnson and Warwolf buff. So whereas before, maybe 6 months ago, I might have been like, yeah, you know what, you should probably farm Daisy Bios. She's useful for that supportness. I would no longer suggest that, and I think it's misleading if people see that, oh hey, they're using Daisy Johnson so much, maybe I should get Daisy. Don't get Daisy, leave her in the garden. Maybe when she gets her tier 2 we can go and pluck her out and check her out, but until then, leave her where she is and try to take from this what you can, because I think it's important to identify ahead of time and identify in advance which support characters are going to help your roster and help you grow. But at the same time, I do want to caution people against just going, oh yeah, everyone's got Wasp tier 2, I'm gonna go do that. Oh yeah, Warwolf tier 2, let me go just bust a mega rank up ticket on him because he's so popular with all the veterans. They must know something I don't know. I know that's kind of a stupid thing to say, or I know that might sound really moronic, but there are a lot of people that solely base their decisions on what high-level veteran players are doing. So I want to make that very clear. Warwolf is not going to help you outside of his buff, outside of his tier 2 passive as a support character for Extreme Alliance Battle and stuff like that. Whereas someone like Wasp is going to really help you a lot, even in stuff like Shadowlands, which, you know, is quite important to be able to clear to at least a certain level. So I hope you guys can take something valuable from this lesson that I'm trying to impart on you. Hopefully you have a better idea of which support characters you want to get if you don't have them all, or which ones to prioritize if you've got some extra tier 2 tickets. As well, guys, let me know in the comments who you think is going to become a more important support character when they finally get their tier 2. Me, for example, I do think that Destroyer is going to get a tier 2 passive that probably gives energy damage reflect to his whole team, just to make him that much more of an annoyance for those heavy energy damage dealing characters. As well, I hope that someone like Deathlock finally gets something like defense penetration to the whole team as a support tier 2 passive. Defense penetration is so highly valuable, and to give new players and to give players who are still building their roster the ability to augment their team with defense penetration if they don't have it on cards, if they can't roll it on obelisks, I think that would be a fantastic look for the game, and it would be great for new players. So let me know what your thoughts are, let me know what you think, and of course, guys, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.